Humdrummity, humdrummity, humdrummity.
Welcome back, listeners. It's always great to meet someone who not only talks the talk, but also walks the walk. In midlife, Peter Reek sold his successful leadership recruitment agency, obtained his master's degree in applied positive and coaching psychology, then founded InHabit, a multi-facetted service company that encourages individuals to find their potential and passions, then helps guide them to thrive in the second half of their lives. Peter is a true advocate of Generation X and its power to embrace change, even in the face of pressure to maintain the appearance of traditional success. Tune in to find out why the midlife crisis is now a myth. Okay, we're not getting any younger, so let's get on with the show. Hi, Peter, and thanks for joining me on Humdrummity today. How's life treating you?
Life, Graham is treating me well. It's beautiful in Vancouver. Spring has hit, and I'm outside, breathing it in and loving what outdoors has to offer.
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate this spring so far. I may even have to resort to watering my yard. So, as we do from time to time here on Humdrummity, I would like you to state your full given name.
My full given name is William Peter Reek.
William Peter Reek. Now, you go by Peter. What's the the history behind that?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, my father's first name is William as well. So my parents, in all their wisdom, decided that I would go by my middle name to avoid any confusion. Little did they know that throughout the rest of my life, it would create confusion every time I had to explain. My first name is William, but I go by Peter in banks, passport application situations, any doctor. I don't even correct doctors anymore. I just go by William.
Now, the last name Reek,
right?
Unique name. What is the the historical lineage behind that name, and where are your forebears from?
Yeah, I think it has essentially a British background. Some would say Norse. It actually Reek has some form of indication of power in the name apparently, but it doesn't translate well. So it's a name that I've heard every joke in the book. I've been you can imagine everybody's always taken aback. You always have to spell it. My daughters, interestingly enough, two of them are married, and although they, in other circumstances they might have kept their last name, they let it go quite easily.
Right.
But we've all learned to love it.
Now, you said, you've heard all the jokes. Are there any great like teasing or nickname stories? Anyone call you something like, like Smelly Pete or something like that?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah, well, Reekster was really the way that it played out for most of my life. But, I can remember, things like as early as grade 3 or 4 playing in the park. Peter Reek took a leak in the creek for a week. So everybody just, it was just a name that it was like fair game. It was fair game. And I had to learn to play fair game with it too.
Do you think having that teasing somehow formed your personality somewhat?
Well, I think, you had to learn to laugh at it. Like, I never really was devastating tease to me. It was always more of a in fun kind of thing. Like, seriously, names are just funny sometimes, right? So I think I learned that early on. I never really, never really got dug too deep. If it shaped anything, maybe just help with the sense of humor. Laugh at yourself. Yeah.
Okay. So, where I'd like to take this, our conversation today is talking about people's work.
Okay.
And how you look to influence people as they move into midlife. Now, previously you worked in HR and corporate recruiting, but you made a conscious decision to change your focus. Can you tell us about that change and why you made it?
Yeah, I think throughout my entire career, I had one foot in marketing and one foot in human capital or people leadership or HR related. And actually, when I came back from an overseas assignment, I had been on as an expat in the UK and Australia, came back, and I was in a space where I was meeting with different recruiters as I was looking for my next step. And, through those experiences, I thought, hey, I like what they do. I think I could do this. And and I started a company in 2007 called Smart Savvy and Associates, and we were a marketing focused recruitment firm. And what I thought would probably be a 5 year journey turned into a 15-year journey, and I just sold the company last well, October 2020. So, um, and in that time, I think I conducted over 6,000 interviews of people, really got to know, what causes people to stand apart in workspaces. And we always would start every interview with this concept of, so you were born, then what? We would just give people a blank uh, sheet of paper, the day you were born on one side, and today, and people would tell us their stories. And so I got to, we really tried to be human in our approach to working with people and understanding and telling their stories in turn to our clients. And the people's stories are fascinating. The things that shape people, the things that made that list, because had people limit it to 7 or 8 things that shaped them into the person that they are. The things that made that list were, really formative things that don't come up in everyday conversation. So people walked away really enjoying sharing that. And our team would walk away feeling like we really got to know someone. So in that process, my passion for people and career and fulfillment in career started to bubble up. And we got to a point where I was ready to let that company go, and I sold it on to two of our team members. And then I went back to school, uh, got a master's in applied positive psych and coaching, and did my master's thesis on midlife transition. So that blending of career and midlife, when you change jobs when you're 30, people applaud you and say, way to go. When you're looking to make a career shift or change something at 50, people are like, what's going on? What's happening? So it's still, you've got plenty of runway left, and greater clarity of where you'd like to take that runway. So I think it's a beautiful time to work with people and helping them determine, how am I going to spend this next chapter of my career.
So I want to go back to that when you were talking about having people, when you were doing recruitment, they would, go through the process of describing their lives. How would you encourage them? Because a lot of people don't immediately want to start divulging their, sort of personal life story. I think in a lot of interviews, people may want to keep that somewhat of a mystery when applying for a job. How would you, coax people to, open up and start reviewing their life into these 7 or 8 significant events?
It's interesting. So I would always say to people, we've kept the instructions here deliberately light so you can take it where you want to. So, some people would walk away and their timeline would have Severin, graduated from high school here, got my master's here, XX, like very factual things. And then other people would say, lost my parent here, had to, and we would get the story of how their life adapted as a result of having that kind of major shift in their life. So we were given, we gave people personal choice. So it was like, we're keeping the instructions light here, take it where you want, don't take it anywhere you don't want. And funnily, people would open up.
Mm.
Actually, at one point we made a video that just highlighted, it was an animated video of all the different things that had uh, been shared in that setting. And of course, and a lot happened in the time when I was recruiting with respect to transparency. There was a very much of a, don't say anything that you don't want to come up in an interview. And throughout the course of that, this whole new crew of people and this whole new way of thinking came in, where people were very open about,
Mm.
because they wanted to, I don't want to work anywhere that wouldn't take me as I am, kind of thinking. So it was an interesting phenomenon to watch the millennials kind of rise into leadership positions and watch their take on things. And then, of course, the tail end of things with Gen Z coming in, like transparency is the starting point for them. It's the
Mm.
table stakes. Yeah.
So you see this more, that's more of a generational shift than sort of a, cultural mindset shift.
Both. I think both. Like, I think the intersection of transparency just became the way things started. So culturally, people just started being more open about things, but it was really started more, I would say, from the generational side of the younger group coming in, but our group, who I would call Generation X, really, you know, tried to maintain balance on that front, but it was still trending towards. I'm just ready to talk about who I am.
What do you think then was really the major impetus for that sort of change in the way people would want to present themselves?
I think a big shift that I saw in workplaces throughout the time of recruit when I was recruiting, so 2007 to 2020, uh, was a move towards organizations having to come to terms with the fact that we are leading a whole person. We this It's a whole person that's coming to this workplace. And I saw some companies come to grips with that better than others. But in general, the work force, and it was hugely emphasized by the pandemic. You had to realize I'm dealing with a whole person here. This is a whole person, so I need to be concerned with them as a person versus just them as an employee.
Do you think that maybe there's some sort of uh, shift in this idea of me being important as opposed to I am going to come, to the company, which is important?
Yeah, yeah, definitely a shift. And I would say that, at the beginning, I think, finding that perfect balance. I always talk about the it factor as those people who can balance two tensions. And it's
Mm,
like bringing enough of myself into the mix that I'm able to advocate for myself, that I'm able to, um, you know, uh, put things through a self filter to the point where it's not completely just about all about self. And then on the other side, um being able to balance that I am part of an organization, I'm part of a team, and there is an intersection there. So I think the people who can balance that well, it's like I am both able to advocate for myself, and I realize fully that I am contributing to a larger effort here. That's the really great mix.
mm. Okay, so I just have one final question about this sort of phase of your life. You mentioned you recently sold that company that you had founded from the ground up. Was there a sense of loss at the selling of that? What were your feelings around that
Mm.
change and, moving on from that company?
I remember a pivotal moment. Like it was smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, so there was a lot of things happening. But we had moved all the furniture out, and we had on one of a really nice arched window, we had our logo. The sun was coming in, all the furniture had been moved out, everybody had gone home, and our logo was projected on the wall.
Mm,
And I just had a good cry. Like it was like this gift to say, hey, listen, what we built here was something special. I loved our office. I loved the people in it. I love what we had assembled. So to see it kind of in that silhouette, the logo in that silhouette, knowing that things were about to be changing for me, was super. It was super emotive, hit me in the right place, and actually, I would argue, really helped me with the grieving process because so much of your identity when you create something is attached to that. Like this thing that people applaud you for, it's hard to let go of sometimes.
mm. Yeah, well, that sounds like a beautiful moment that you
It
got to
was, yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Now, so you sell the company and you decide to start a new company and found InHabit.
Mhm.
What led you to that change, and why was that important for you to make that change?
Hmm. I My wife and I were Jody and I were on a trip, a car trip down to Cannon Beach, Oregon. It's a place that we go every year between Christmas and New Year's because it's kind of our centering spot. It's kind of like where we do some big picture talking for what's coming up in the next year. And we were listening to a no, an audiobook by Richard Rohr called Falling Upwards. And it was all centered around second half of life. And we were kind of mesmerized by that book. It hit me strong enough that it was an impetus in me pursuing my master's and choosing to do my master's thesis research project in and around a positive midlife transition and what differentiates a positive midlife transition to a more challenging one. And from there, evolved this passion to build a set of resources to help people with second half of life transition and moving towards closer towards what they really would love for that second half of their for that chapter of their lives. Yeah, so that's how it came to be. That's the why, and we're still figuring out the how a little bit, but it's definitely in motion.
Well, I find that actually really inspiring because not only have you decided to talk the talk, but you have walked the walk. You have done the midlife transition. Now, can you tell me more then about the services that InHabit provides and why we should look to InHabit as a voice of inspiration?
Yeah, no, I can for sure. So what the things that where we focus our efforts are on providing people with sustainable think beyond experiences like weekend retreats and things like that where you're coming in and getting inundated with something. We wanted to make sure that we were there for people over the long haul. So we have started a counseling center. So we've got a counseling center serving the Canadian market with a group of counselors who are equally passionate about helping people transition with midlife transition in different aspects. We have a series of coaching programs, individual one-to-one coaching. We also have group coaching circles that are topical themed group coaching. So things like reestablishing your relationship with money, which is obviously something that has a huge impact on second half. Everything from menopause to male friendship to conversations about things that we have a really big program coming up in and around sleep and rest because sleep is a huge challenge in midlife often. And we're going to be working with a woman by the name of Dr. Jade Wu, and she's written a book called Hello Sleep, and we're building a coaching program around that with her and hosting some workshops. I'd say the thing that is really, really exciting about what we've got going on right now is what we are calling our travel studies. So, um, uh, the one that's our first one that we're leading with is a Camino trek up the Portuguese coast. In the Camino, there's a group of 14 people who are we're going to make that trek together. We're going to use, you have, we're going to meet 4 times before we actually get together in Porto and have, do some planning. We're putting a training program together. We're getting ready emotionally, physically for the journey. And we'll debrief with each other nightly while we're on that trek. It's a walk your own way, but we'll meet together for dinner every night and it'll be a community experience. And we've just found that that was one of the things that we put forward that people just grabbed onto. So we're doing a similar type of trails and temples trip through Japan as well. So yeah, so excursions, retreats that are longer, but we're accomplishing something together as well.
Now, we haven't
Mhm.
really spoken directly about this because that is essentially what you provide through InHabit is guiding people through this sort of midlife shift change, particularly around career. Now, I think there must be people that come to you asking for advice because that's a pretty scary proposition for a lot of people. People get entrenched into a career. They've gone through the ranks. They get to a certain point where they're making a good salary, and then now they are going to make a major shift where they have to look at really giving up a lot in order to gain something new. How do you help people manage through that transition?
Yeah, it's interesting because we build these lives that are fueled or supported by the salaries that we create for ourselves, and we build our whole world around what our incomes will support. And then we get to a point and we end up asking ourselves the question, is what I'm building here or what I really want, and or am I really working towards what is most true to me, most value, most closest to my values. So that's one area where we really work with people. You said that we guide people. I think what we do is we guide people to help themselves. So like it's all through questions, that because ultimately you're the only one that can shape your midlife experience. No one's going to do that for you. So but you can ask yourself the hard questions around that. And then I think we get to a point where it's like, I have built this world, I have built this income, this life that that requires X amount of dollars coming in every month. And then, then you face the question, is like, this thing that I'm clutching so tightly, this paycheck that I'm holding on so tightly to, this lifestyle that I'm holding, is this the thing that's keeping me from actually moving towards what I really want?
Mm.
So, or is it what's keeping life, um, this life that's trying to find me? Is this keeping me? Is this comfort of all of these things? Is it keeping me from um, this wonderful life that could be there for me if I would just perhaps let go of it? A lot of times, um, we talk about a trapeze illustration where it's like I'm holding on to one trapeze and looking, contemplating reaching out to the other, but I just can't let go of this one. So it's trying to figure out, asking ourselves those hard questions as well.
Right. There, in a sense, it becomes sort of golden handcuffs,
Yeah, yeah,
and very hard to move on from that. Particularly if, you have kids, you have a mortgage. It's a big leap of faith to, make that change. Now, in the end, you could be a much happier and more fulfilled person. But I think getting into that mindset is one that people will struggle with. How do you, approach people that come to you saying, I need to change my mindset? How can I do this?
mm, mm. I, I think the mindset piece, is such a key underlying factor in everything with life, right? So this mindset that someone might be wanting to discuss or explore is a mindset that's been present for a long time with them. So they, intuitively, we probably have a grip on where it's interfering with things, and that when this mindset that I'm carrying around isn't helping me, with respect to this, you know, this life that I would really love to live. And I think that, when we think of shifting mindsets, the one I really think is what is a starting point for a lot of people is this concept of releasing the shackles of certainty. So the things that I think that I know, uh, like stepping into curiosity and releasing the shackles of certainty is a big, this certainty that I have of that I need to earn this, that I need to maintain this level of income, or these aspects of my life need to be continually part of my life going forward. Those, or this belief set that I'm carrying needs to, is paramount for me. Sometimes those become more like shackles. So I think having people explore, uh, from the angle of what if, a perspective change. What if this was no longer important to you? What if, this thing that you've prized, is really interfering with you, with your happiness quotient, if you want to call it your happiness quotient, or your subjective well-being is the psychological term. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like challenging people, having them explore for themselves. It's like penny drop moments have to happen with the individual. I'm not gonna sit across. My advice isn't as good as I think it is one of my favorite, um, uh, coach trainers, Michael Bungay Stanier, says, my advice isn't as good as I think it is. And my advice is my advice. It's advice that applies to me. But if I can invite you to explore you, within your, then that's really where the work can happen.
Right. Now, I do want to get back to this concept of shifting mindset a bit later in our
Okay.
conversation, but I want to talk about this idea of identity. We
Mm,
we were speaking about people, being potentially fearful, hesitant to move on and make a midlife shift. But this idea of identity, because a lot of people see their current career, their current work as their identity. Is work, you know, does it identify who we are, or is it a false sense of identity? Because if we're in a job and, well, I do this, I do that, but it's not really our passion, you know, where is that identity? Do we need to break down our identity and reimagine ourselves?
I think the topic of identity is just huge. It's massive. When it comes to career, I would say that, in varying scales, what we do is who we are. For different people, a good friend of mine by the name of Claire Booth wrote a book called The Achiever Fever, and that's her story of separating her identity from her achievements. That plays loud for a significant portion of the population. There's other portions of the population who that's less of. There's some people who are just less influenced by what they do. What they do is just a means to the life that they want versus who they are. I fall into the former camp. So the kind of achievement piece of when you were to ask me about selling my business, and I feel like my shadow was still wearing the T-shirt of Smart Savvy for a long time because that's what I had become known for, and that's what my community knew me to be, the one to help make connections within the marketing world. And we built a really great set of relationships there that are shift. So, and that same community, it's hard for them to look at me in a different way now, other than that. So I think the concept of identity and career or work or accomplishment, that's a big thing for a lot of people to work through. And we spend, if we talk about first and second half of life, we spend our first half kind of figuring out who we are, and then the second half kind of stepping into that. And we have it's like we get this advantage of this software upgrade, um, which informs us we have this beautiful history and sometimes very challenging histories to work through that help us really uh, have clues about who we are, that are less attached to what we do. And that's a big transition that people make, is differentiating between those two.
Right. So, back to your personal story again. So you had this success in this business, but did you at the time not feel this is who I am, even though I am achieving and I am recognized as, authority in this realm, this isn't really who I am. Was that something you had to come to the realization yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Like um, I think when you're factoring in answering asking yourself the tough questions of who am I, there's elements of who I am that were definitely present in the business that I had created. So this, honoring humanity, looking at people's life stories more than just their career resumes, those were all parts of who I was that I brought to that business. And we also launched a career coaching division of that company as well. So I think it is. And then to make, but I hit a point where it was like, I feel like I've done all and offered all that I can to this, to what's happening here. And I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to step into a new direction. Now, truthfully, I have a higher appetite for change than, like, I have that entrepreneurial change piece. So that was something that was, in essence who I am. So I was able to uh, reach towards something new with less angst than most.
Mm.
But then some. I'll say some. I won't say most. I won't put a number to it, but then some. So I could reach to this appetite for change is strong within me, and fueled by really wanting to work with people to help them figure things out for themselves, to achieve aha moments, to be an impetus in that for people, to be somebody who helps inspire people to take that pause, ask that hard question that's going to reorient them. So it was a little bit of a compulsion that it was something that I couldn't let not do. I could not do this. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll figure out those negatives.
Those
We'll
those
break those
triple
down.
negatives or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, now I just want to shift focus a little bit because I know based on what you are trying to achieve with InHabit, obviously the people who are in midlife right now are Gen Xers, as we mentioned earlier. So, what can you tell us about Gen X and the unique position it currently finds itself in this point in their life?
Wow, so much there, Graham. I think one of the key things with that was formative. Like I remember, I was reading an article. I was home on a university break. Maybe it was Christmas break. I'm not sure. I went to school in BC, but I lived in Toronto. And I went home and I was reading the front page of the lifestyle section in the Toronto Star, and it was, "Will Generation X ever amount to anything?" That was the question, and of course, it had a picture of a skateboarder on, probably similar conversations that we would have to about other generations coming up behind Generation X. And I think the unique things about Generation X is that we experienced the first of a lot of things. So this whole tech shift, most of us remember getting our first email address. Most of us remember life before smartphones. Most of us, have used a payphone and have seen life before tech as it is. Also, with that came an ethic of working hard, making a contribution, being a team player. So all of those, we have all of this undergirding that's informing us. Um, and we've never, you know, one would argue that the stars never really align for Generation X. Some would refer to Generation X as the forgotten generation. Um, and that we had recessions hitting at times in our lives when it was right formative for us, that really kind of interfered with our ability to build the careers that we wanted to and whatnot. So there's all that historical evolution of things. I think one of the biggest things to put on the table is that we've never really had to fight for anything. So and here we sit at a time when the world is taking on a different shape. There's different things that are at play in the world, moving from a global trading economy to something different, or whatever is going to emerge out of everything that's happening on that front. And we're starting to have to ask ourselves some tough questions. Who are we in this? What is our responsibility in this? So I think that we sit at this point where perhaps life hasn't played out the way, as beautifully as it did for the boomers. We may have be faced with working longer runways. May have much bigger mortgages than groups behind us that have decided that owning a house isn't the most important thing that you could ever do. So we sit with a lot of this pressure that makes decisions and that letting go of harder. So I think it's an interesting time for Generation X for sure.
Yeah, well, and back to what you're saying, because, I know from when I came out of university, it was the early 90s. We were in a major recession. And so, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. There wasn't the opportunity to follow your passions per se. And I think a lot of Gen X took on jobs not because of a passion, a desire, a love of it, but because we just had to do something to earn an income. And does that, in your experience, influence this sort of midlife crisis? Because a lot of us in Gen X are now hitting this time where we've established our career that we, sort of more or less maybe fell into, and now do want to follow our passions.
Yeah, I'd say in general, for a variety of different reasons. Like I mentioned, I started my company in 2007. Well, 2008 is when the whole North American economic system collapsed. And so, I had to completely re-engineer things. I think there's been different things that have been at play, that have made it more challenging. So we broke open the tech industry, but then we were quickly, then these digital natives came in, and it made anybody often made people in the tech industry feel outdated because of so there's just been a lot of things going on when it comes to like I'm not a big believer in the world midlife crisis. In fact, I've written a whole thing on debunking the midlife crisis because I don't think it's a crisis. I think it's just a series of challenges that are no different than other challenges that we have to face throughout life and figure out who we're going to be in those challenges. But there is definitely this point where it hits somebody that says, my life does not look like what I wanted it to or what I thought it was going to be, and it's been a lot harder than I thought. And I think that has hit Generation X from a couple of different angles. It wasn't an easy runway in. It hasn't been an easy runway. But then we think of the generation before the boomers and what they had to go through with um, uh, depression, recession, and there's arguments that this same kind of life isn't looking like I thought it would be. That many predict that millennials and Gen Z are going to be confronted with as well. So it's hard for everyone. There are elements that were hard for Generation X, and here we sit saying, who are we going to be in spite of the hardships that have led me to this time?
Yeah, I think every generation actually has their own hardships, and we just focus on our situations. But you go and you talk to millennials, you talk to Zoomers, Gen Z. They all have their issues they're dealing with. Okay, I'd like to move on because as a result of your experiences and your starting of the InHabit, you have now gained the insights and experience to start writing a book. So you have a book that's upcoming. I believe it's going to be published in October, entitled Shift: 7 Mindsets for an Inspired Midlife. Can you tell me about the genesis of that book and what you're hoping to achieve through publishing that book?
Mm-hmm. Um, I think so much of we are. If the book was, a simple couple of lines, it would be. Uh, we shape our midlife experience. If the midlife experience that we're about to embark on, for the most part, will largely be determined by our mindset and our viewpoint or the vantage point at which we look at aging and what aging offers us versus what it takes away from us. And I think so. The book is the culmination of research of other groups other than myself, but it also was fueled largely by my master's thesis, exploring the things that make midlife positive versus challenging for people. And at the end of the day, our mindset is the biggest determinant of what midlife will be for us. How we look at midlife
Mm.
and what's ahead for us is the biggest determinant. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I was fortunate enough that you forwarded me an advanced copy of the book. And one of the things you bring up is this idea of returning to the second stage of life. Can you talk more about this concept of returning?
Well, I write, I say this isn't, it's not about, it's more about returning what's important to you, to that piece within yourself that, uh, perhaps maybe, we were driven by distraction throughout the first half of our life, or driven towards things that weren't, as we were shaping our identity and moving to, working towards climbing higher, or identity formation, the things that perhaps maybe took us in directions that weren't necessarily true to ourselves or weren't necessarily, inextricably linked to what we really want for ourselves. Versus the second half, which is kind of rediscovering, taking time to mine for the stories in your first half that will give you clues of what's when you were most engaged with your life, when you were most engaged with the people around you, to uh, help you determine what you want more of in your second half. So it's not
Right,
about it's not about creating like becoming a whole new person. It's more about rediscovering who you really are.
right. So, how will your book help us return?
It will challenge. It will challenge people to think differently. to look at things differently. It will move towards seven. Well, first of all, it starts off what it's not in the title. It's got three commitments that I will make to myself uh, in order uh, to be able to do the work that I'm about to do in discovering what I want for my second half. Those would include, telling myself the truth, no matter how challenging the answer is to the question. So committing not to, um, fabricate or rationalize, but to just answer questions directed in my direction, honestly. The other commitments, committing to looking at myself as a whole person. I am multidimensional. I have a different, I'm a physical being, I'm an intellectual being, I'm a social being, I'm a spiritual being. So making sure that I'm looking at myself holistically. And the third commitment is in and around radical acceptance, and that is a psychological term that that it basically says it talks about what a good friend of mine, Rob Bell, calls embracing every square inch of your story. So everything that has brought me to the point of where I am is part of who I am, and I have to figure out who I am in light of what that is. And it doesn't excuse trauma inducers or things along those lines, but they still become part of our story, and I'm left trying to formulate those stories into my future and how they're going to what extent I'm going to let them impact me or drive me in different directions. So those three commitments are kind of okay. I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to, and then we start talking about the mind shifts, which are uh, quite wide and varied. And each chapter, I really did. Each chapter ends with some questions for people to factor through in and around that mind shift. So it's a little bit of a working book. It's a good book to do as a group.
Mm.
Uh, and to do as a bit of a study with a group of friends. Um, and yeah, so it's a book to challenge people and how they think.
Right. So it would start more with sort of analyzing the psychology of changing the mindset and then moves into actually providing practical methods.
Mm.
Correct?
Yeah, and everybody's different, right? So one of the things as well, and I love poetry because it usually starts at the emotion centered. So it's filled with research, it's got poetry, it's got questions, and it's got stories. And there's a couple of frameworks in there as well. So I really wanted people to walk away saying this book was interesting and helpful. It's also a super easy read. I'm building a website that has the research to support there's always that person who wants to go deeper. And it's
Mm.
like, you want to go deeper, you can go deeper over here on this website. But I really wanted it to be, almost you might be able to read the whole book on a flight from Vancouver to Toronto. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So would you classify it into, it's obviously a self-help book, but it doesn't sound like it encapsulates much New Ageism or spiritualism in it?
There is there is a spirit. I believe we're spiritual beings, like that's connected to the meaning ends of things. So I focus the spiritual side on determining meaning for you. So there's different people who will have different spiritual histories that will this book will speak to in different ways. I grew up in a faith system, so for me it challenges me to take a look at that faith system and figure out which aspects of that faith system, like it's moving away from this faith that I grew up in and making it my own or not. As I go as I explore who I am in this second half. And but it is challenging. I think one of the biggest things, and I speak to in the chapter on meaning, is illustrated in some of the work that's been done in and around the concept of awe, and that is really pointing to the fact that when we look at what gives us a sense of awe is quite often tied to when we're outside in a outdoor environment experiencing something beautiful, and there's all of that visual stimulation, but then there's also the recognition that I am just a very small part of this massive world. It's it and that and I think that's who in the if there was a spiritual element to it, it would be um, what's my why behind why I exist.
Okay. Now, one thing I'd like to bring up that you mentioned before as we get near the end of our conversation together, which is this myth of the midlife crisis. You mentioned it early. Can you talk more about why, to you, the midlife crisis is a myth?
I don't. The concept of midlife crisis was actually Canadian that determined that term, and it went international in the '60s. And it was like quite male centric. It was very connected to, and it ultimately evolved to um, sports cars and you know re-engineering life to move faster and supply me with a whole host of things that I regret that I don't have access to anymore. So, and I think when it comes to, but when you actually unpack what's happening in midlife, this thing that is a crisis or has been previously identified as a crisis is really more of an opportunity. Like it's really a time um, to do this exploration of what really matters to me, where would I like to take things in the future, what's not working for me right now, where have I gone down a path that I don't want to, and these are just normal life challenges. It's not like a significant crisis. Now there's different crises that happen to people in midlife, health challenges and whatnot, that tend to have like an uh, expedited journey towards what's really important to you as you're factoring in your mortality. But the concept of everybody who hits midlife is going to hit a crisis is not it's not factually supported, and it's not supported by research, and I think it's actually detrimental to people to begin with that negative perception. It's a plot twist. It's not a crisis. It's like things are shifting, things are changing. There's an opportunity for me to take authorship of this next chapter, and I could choose to avoid and just buy a new car or a new boat or whatever floats your boat,
Your
but
proverbial boat. Yeah.
your proverbial boat. But it's really just a great natural occurrence within life when you're moving from I've been moving fast and now I want to slow down a little bit and figure out what's important. And if I try to go from prolong my first half, like I try to keep like I just want to move faster, then that can have some negative side effects.
Yeah, and I think actually what you've just said it really ties up this whole concept and encompasses what you're trying to achieve because I think this previous mindset of a midlife crisis was that you were stuck in your situation. And the only way to get out of it would be to purchase new things, to, not make a full scale shift and try and find new meaning. You're going to stay in the same meaning, but try and supplement it with new toys.
I think when you reflect back, like for me personally, all of my best life decisions have been a result of slowing down and thinking and processing and not speeding up, not just
Mm.
like uh regrettable decisions on big purchases or whatnot. And I've made those too. I'm not immune, but I think that this concept of let's shift the dialogue or let's shift the thinking around midlife to here I sit at this with this incredible opportunity to leverage everything that I've learned in my first half and take it with me into my second half.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that again is this, the shift, I think, as the title of your book is called, but this shift into meaning. That,
Hmm.
you know, meaning is exponentially more beneficial to you than any other, product or I shouldn't say experience because experience can obviously bring meaning to your life, much like, these idea you have with the travel studies. But shifting into finding a deeper meaning in our second half or post midlife.
Mm-hmm. And avoiding some of those distractions. And we have the benefit that we're not starting from scratch and we're not necessarily starting over. We're just, starting from experience.
Right. All right, Peter, I find myself in a bit of a crisis because we're going to have to bring our interview to a close. In your terms, your idea, how would you define success?
I would define success as asking yourself the tough questions and investing the time to uh, to really be thoughtful about an intentional. I know intentional is a word that gets thrown around a lot, and different people it has different reactions to. But like an intentional moving towards, if we can either things that we do either move us towards the life that we really want, or can kind of move us towards away from it, and thoughtful questions to move ourselves. No one's going to move you. Move yourself towards the life that you really want.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier in your book there is poetry in there, poems that you have written.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably one of the most oft-quoted poems, but I think apt in this situation is Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken,
Mm-hmm.
and Two Roads Diverged.
Mm-hmm. And you're sitting there at the fork.
And you're sitting there at the fork. This is the fork. Midlife is the fork.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily, it could be a series of small forks, right? But it's just this continual hitting a decision point and saying, okay, what do I want most here versus, what do I want most versus what do I want right now? So, and though that navigating that tension.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, to quote the bard, parting is such sweet sorrow.
It is. It is.
And I'm sorry we're going to have to end our conversation here, but I really appreciate you being on the show. And I look forward to following what comes for you with, again, the publishing of your book.
Graham, thank you for doing what you do. It's amazing.
Who doesn't like to hear words of encouragement? I hope my conversation with Peter will encourage you to do some personal reflection and perhaps find your passions and greater meaning as you progress through or toward midlife. Be sure to visit Peter's websites, InHabit.life and InHabit.magazine, for more inspiration. Keep your eyes open for his upcoming book, Shift: 7 Mindsets for an Inspired Midlife, being published this fall. As always, don't forget to follow Humdrummity and like or comment on this or any episode. Until next time, keep escaping monotony and take care.